Hey scholars, this is a video explaining the informative speech assignment. Please be sure that you have the document out in front of you. I recommend that you read through the whole document before watching the video. I'm going to kind of go through all the different components of your speech assignment. So as I already mentioned in class, the speech is going to be about an event, object, or health condition. Um, I've given you some examples in class, and over the course of the next several weeks in class, we'll be having PowerPoint lectures and having discussions about different components of informative speaking. So the first thing I'll just go over the important deadlines. As I mentioned in class, this is a scaffolded approach to how you're doing the speech assignment. There's things you're doing at different time points, doing little, they're all geared towards the main assignment, the speech presentation. So the first assignment is to submit your three potential speech topics to Canvas by Sunday 9/24, Sunday September 24th. That's the first thing to do. And so what I highly recommend is that you read ahead a little bit, specifically review chapter 13, which is on preparing and researching presentations. And if you want, you can review the whole chapter or just review the specific part where it says choose your topic. It says choose your topic on the bottom of page 308. And if you read through that, there's like a few pages that just talk about choosing topics and developing a thesis statement, a specific purpose statement, that kind of thing. I would highly recommend that. It won't take you a whole lot of time to do that. Read that first and then come up with a topic. So this first assignment where you're submitting 3 potential speech topics, each one is crucial, but this one is crucial because you're choosing a topic, choosing 3 topics, and then I'll choose for you. You're giving them to me in terms of your preference. So your first choice, second choice, third choice. So you're encouraged to spend time thinking through how you want to choose a topic, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with this topic. You can be researching it and writing about it, and once you choose the topic, you can't change it. So once I say, okay, let's go with topic 2 or topic 3, and I give you feedback on it, you're committed to that topic. So that's why I'm saying make sure that you really think through what you want to do. So if you're looking on Canvas, I highly recommend right now that you just look on Canvas, as I'll walk you through the assignment. There's the informative speech topics assignment, where it basically just says, I give you all the instructions. Submit 3 potential topics, each one. Write the topic out, and then write out a specific purpose statement. Pages 308 to 312 explain what a specific purpose statement is. It's pretty straightforward. It's basically telling the audience what you plan to accomplish in your speech. And then provide a brief explanation for why you're considering that topic. So just give me a little bit of background on why you're thinking of that topic. Doesn't need to be long. And then I say list them in order of preference. First, second choice. It can be all 3 can be an event, all 3 can be an object, or all 3 can be a medical condition, or one of each. Doesn't matter to me, but do rank them in order of your preference. In many cases, in the majority of cases, students will be able to get their first choice. There's other cases where I will tell you to go with your second choice or third choice for a variety of reasons. So here's a really good example of a format for what you'll submit for this specific assignment, where you list the topic, the history of chili peppers, and then write down what type of speech topic that is. In this case, it's an object, chili peppers, the food. And then the specific purpose statement to inform my audience about the hidden world of chili peppers by covering their history, spiciness, how to handle their heat, and some of the alternate uses of peppers. So what that tells me is there's going to be 4 main points in that speech. The history of them, the spiciness of peppers, how to deal with the heat, and then alternate uses of peppers. Those are the 4 main points in this sample topic. The textbook explains the nature of doing that in a specific purpose statement. And then here's a brief explanation of why this particular student was considering chili peppers. Obviously, this is a sample from one of the sample speeches that are on Canvas. As I mentioned in the instructions for this, please don't choose any topics that I've discussed in class or any topics that are in the sample speeches that you see on Canvas. If you do, then that'll affect your grade for this assignment, and of course, you won't be able to do that speech. So just make sure you come up with your own original ideas. So back to the speech assignment document. That's the first thing. The next thing is the annotated bibliography, which you'll submit. As you see, that's not till October. So there's a lot of time that you have between from the time they give you feedback on your speech topic until the time you have to submit that next thing. That's a lot of time. That's where you're going to be doing research and really thinking through how you want to build your speech. I'll have a separate video for that explaining how to do that. And then the final thing that you submit on Canvas is the final outline, and that'll be just prior to the week prior to the day of the weeks of speeches. So for this speech, you need to have at least 4 scholarly sources, and that can be from books, magazines, journals, newspapers, credible websites. I talk about this kind of stuff in class, but for the assignment, you need to have at least 4. I give you examples I give you references for where to look at in your textbook. Those sources need to be audibly cited. I talk about source citations in class, but that's imperative. So this is a plagiarism issue. If you were to give a speech and not give any source citations, oral source citations, that's a plagiarism issue. It would stand to reason that you came up with all the information on your own, which you didn't. The whole goal of this speech is that you're finding information from other people who are experts, and you're just presenting the information to the class to oversimplify it. This is also important for the outline. For the written outline, you still need to have source citation, in-text source citations, which are very similar to an oral citation, except it's in writing versus in speaking. The format might look a little bit different. The wording might look a little different. I give you examples in class. There's examples in the textbook. There's examples on Canvas. So my advice to you is look at the different samples and examples to give you some context for how you might develop your own oral citations and then in-text citations. When you're up front in the audience on the day of your speech, when you're speaking, the only thing you can have with you is one index card, so 4x6 or 5x8. The note card, index card has to be handwritten. No typing or pasting. And if it appears as though you're reading, if I see your index card and you were writing out your entire speech word for word in font size 10, and the entire card is filled up, and it appears that you're reading, obviously, like I can tell when you're reading, that can, in some cases, I might tell you to stop. If you're just reading word for word and not looking at the audience, I might just tell you to stop. In other cases, I might just let you give the whole speech, and then that's going to negatively impact your grade, significantly impact your grade. That use your index card as strategically as possible, and you should have multiple drafts of your index card. In other words, don't just have an index card. Don't make it up just prior to your speech. Have these are your talking points. This is the thing that you're going to have in front of you. Like, make it look really, really good. Write neatly. Put reminders on there. A lot of students will do things like put a smiley face, and it says things, or students will write things like, make sure to breathe, make sure to smile, make sure to whatever, move around. I've seen thousands and thousands of index cards, and another thing that a lot of students do, other than like the smiley faces and personal notes or whatever, words of affirmation, a lot of students will color code their index card. For example, you might have your main points written in blue, and then your transitions written in green, and your source citations written in red, or something like that. Have some sort of system where you're using a color coding system on your index card. That way it's visually like breaking up the material, and that way when you're giving the speech, you're not just looking at the same sort of smattering of letters across an index card, because it's not that difficult to look at an index card. But sometimes when you're dealing with stage fright and you're dealing with just the pressure of giving the speech, sometimes your brain doesn't work the way you want it to work. And so when you do have it broken up according to color, like some sort of a color coding system, sometimes I have found that students, they have told me that they found that very useful. So take your time with that, figure out what works. The speech is longer. This is a longer speech than your last speech. This needs to be at least 4, but no more than 6 minutes. So my advice to you, your goal should be for a 5-minute speech. If your goal is a 5-minute speech, what happens is if you speak a little too quickly, or maybe you forget something, then you're going to be okay, right? In all likelihood, you'll be okay. But if you're practicing your speech and you're always hitting at like exactly 4 minutes, then what could happen is on the day of your speech, you might speak so fast that you're only at 3 minutes or 3.5 minutes, and I've seen that happen. Or if you keep hitting 5 minutes, and then on the day of the speech, for some reason, maybe you took a little bit longer, or you like improvised a little bit and you expanded upon one point in the speech that you hadn't thought about doing that, that you hadn't thought about doing. And at the end of your speech, it maybe is 5.5 minutes, 30 seconds longer than you had been practicing. In this case, you'd be totally fine because you're still within that 6-minute time frame. So practice as many times as you need to in order to get down a goal time. You can consider using a timer as you're practicing. I like using a timer. I like looking at the time, seeing how fast I'm going or seeing how long things take. And then I'll allow you to use a timing device while you're speaking as well in class. So do both. Speak with a timer and then speak without a timer. See what works best. As for the outline, the outline is going to be a full content outline. Preparation, full content outline. That just means it's a blueprint. You're including everything. You're having it's a formal outline with Roman numerals, big A, big B, little 1, little 2, little a, little b, and so on and so forth. You want to have your in-text source citations. You need to have a bibliography. It's imperative. Like you have to have a bibliography for your outline. It'll all be one document, and you'll submit this to Canvas. So you'll have your name on the first page. It'll be your name. You'll have a title for your speech, and then your specific purpose statement, your central idea, and then all of your outline. You have your introduction, and then you have your main point 1, and then your transition, and then main point 2, and then transition, and then main point 3, and then transition, and then you have your conclusion, and then you have your bibliography. You can have your bibliography just underneath the conclusion. If the conclusion, let's say it's halfway through, or if it only takes up a third of the page, you can include your bibliography right underneath that, or just put it on the next page. But nevertheless, it's all going to be one document. There will be, if you fail to include a bibliography, there'll be a point deduction for that. If you fail to include your source citations, your in-text source citations, there's point deductions for that. And just look at the samples. This is worth 25 points, and even though it's only worth 25 points, you have to remember that this is one of the most important components of the whole speech. It's the blueprints of the speech. Even though, if you look at a house, like the blueprints for a house or a building, those are some of the most important things. But the finished product is not the blueprints, right? Even though the blueprints, they end up getting thrown away, or they get filed away in storage and probably never looked at again. Like the main thing is your finished product, right? Your house, your building, your office, your apartment complex, your hotel, right? But the blueprints are one of the most important things. So similarly to your speech, your outline is one of the most important things. It's the foundation of what we see in the class. And what we see in the class is your finished product. That's the thing that's worth 125 points, which is 12.5% of your entire course grade. So 12.5% of your entire course grade is basically decided in about 5 minutes. And hopefully that doesn't sound intimidating. It's not intended to make you feel intimidated, but rather to give you perspective and context for the importance of a blueprint. So it doesn't have to be like word for word 6-7 page outline, but it needs to include all the parts, all the components, right? Your main points, your supporting points. Write concisely. The more concise that you can write, the better. Less is more. You don't need a super long outline. And I mentioned here, there's not a specific page length required, but I said most outlines for a speech like this would be approximately 3 pages. Which 3 pages, an outline is way different than a 3-page paper, right? Because it's shorter lines, and then your double spacing. I would say single space. I don't really care that much about whether it's single space or double space. My advice to you is single space in between the points, but then double space between the main parts. So like double space between main point 1 and transition, between that transition and main point 2, double space between main point 2 and the next transition, and so on and so forth. It's really not a huge deal, but it's just visually, it's easier it's easier for you to read. It's easier for me to read. Either way, the important part is that the outline makes sense and that it's detailed and full. Having labeling your transitions, labeling all the parts, right? Basically, it's all the nuts and bolts, the blueprints. So here's a sample on page 2. Here's a sample of what your outline might look like. Let's say the very beginning of your outline. You put your name, a title, and then you list your specific purpose statement. You list your central idea, and then you label the introduction, and then your introduction is an outline. There's an outline for your introduction, right? And that last thing says, today I would like to share with you what I've learned about the history of chili peppers, so on and so forth. And then after that, in this person's outline, the next part would be main point one. Here's a checklist to remember, tips to remember when presenting your speech, and then the requirements. Here's just everything sort of summarized. A lot of students will often ask, like, do you have to dress up? As I mentioned in class, like, I don't require you to dress any particular way for a speech. I recommend that you dress up for whatever dress up is for you. A lot of students tend to dress up somewhat more formally than they typically do. Not that they're wearing a suit and tie. If you want to wear a suit and tie, you want to wear something formal, totally fine by me. It does not, my grading has no, or your dress has no bearing on the way I grade your speech. The main reason why you should dress any particular way is because of how it might make you feel. And what research shows is when you're dressed up, it changes how you perceive yourself. You tend to take yourself more seriously. You feel more formal, maybe even a little bit uncomfortable in a way, but you're in the sense of, like, I don't typically dress like this. So it's almost like a tangible physical reminder, like, I'm dressed up for a specific reason, like a job interview or an important meeting or something like that, or in this case, a speech. Like I said, do what you think was going to be best for you. No visual aids, and then obviously lots of rehearsals are needed, and I'll talk a lot about that kind of stuff in class. Make sure you read through the grading rubric. The way that the speech is graded is based on this. Look, that last page of the grading rubric. Did the speech begin with a well-developed attention getter and a detailed introduction to the topic? Did the speaker illustrate the relevance of the topic as it relates to an audience of college students? The supporting material, the research. So look at all these different factors, and that's how I grade. I grade holistically. I look at the big picture. If there is no introduction, that's going to have a huge impact. If the research is substandard and not very scholarly, and it's sort of unclear about the credibility of the nature of the sources, that's going to impact the grade. If it's hard to follow and the overall flow of the speech is choppy, if it's just generally hard to follow, or you're kind of bouncing your ideas around, that's like lacking fluidity, and the organization sort of all over the place. It makes it a lot more challenging to learn from a speech. The speech is supposed to be 5 minutes, super concise. I mean, super neatly put together 5-minute presentation of a lot of information that you found. And you've taken a lot of time. In theory, you've taken tons of time, lots of time to take all that information and make it compact. And you're extrapolating like the most useful, like, kernels of knowledge of information from all your sources. Because, like, you could talk about your topic for hours, but you've read all these different sources. You spent all this time thinking about it. It's like, how do I get all this into 5 minutes? With a lot of practice, right? And being very specific and intentional with everything that you say. And you can get a lot said in 5 minutes, especially for a formal speech like this. And of course, delivery is an important part, as a crucial part to this. Your eye behavior, your nonverbal gestures, the way that you're engaging with the audience, facial expressions, avoiding things such as like and those are the filler words, the communicative pauses. You want to avoid that as much as possible. Having an appropriate rate and pace and volume. If it's too hard to hear, if you're talking too fast, you're talking too slow, all those things are important. And speaking in a way that's sort of a conversational style, but at the same time, your style should be also formal, but conversational in the sense of I'm engaging with the audience. And then, of course, being prepared for the presentation. Failing to follow the assignment correctly will definitely have an impact on the grade. And then, of course, if you don't meet the time requirement, if a speech is less than 4 minutes or longer than 6 minutes, then you can see how the points are deducted in that way. So, I mean, there's a lot more that we'll talk about with regard to the speech, but that's what I wanted to include, at least for this assignment, for this video explanation of this speech. Okay, talk to you later. Bye.